well as even Ahmaud Arbery was also in that same year. That was a tough year. That was a lot. Wow, when you put it into perspective in that timeline, that was like 3 major deaths that kind of created the catalyst for what we're seeing now in terms of racial conversations in North America and even globally, honestly. But anyway, his parents were saying that it's not that they're like coming for the police. They're just trying to understand why in this particular incident they felt that that was the best way to handle the situation. Why would that be the best way to handle the situation? Why would they even need to use a no-knock warrant if they already had a regular warrant? They didn't have time to knock? But then again, they could say the severity of the case at hand. Now, what were the police originally doing in that apartment anyway, executing these warrants? They were looking for Amir's teenage cousin, who was actually one of the suspects named in a homicide and was named on the warrant. And that was who they were actually looking for when they ended up killing Amir Locke in the process. Now, we look at 2 years ago, we started seeing, 2 years ago, we were, kind of just heading into lockdowns. But also 2 years ago, we were starting to see kind of a ramp up in a lot more conversations regarding police brutality and just treatment in general and why there needs to be reform in the police. And then, of course, as we went on into the summer of 2020, that's when things really took a turn with George Floyd's murder. And now, 2 years later, that people are still asking again, why are no-knock warrants a thing, and why are people still being shot and killed by the police? Like, 2 years is like, we feel, okay, maybe that's not enough time. But then when you look at 1963 to now, it feels a little like, it feels a little disrespectful. Honestly, it feels a little disrespectful. It seems like there are ways that police can implement different strategies or different techniques to ensure things like this don't happen, that people aren't being killed at the rate that they are at the hands of police. That there could be ways that we can implement more community support for folks so the police, so law enforcement in general isn't burdened by, just dealing with the community, that they have to focus on other things. Fine, sure. Let's maybe do a little more, like have more incentives to support the community through different services, through different programs. But then again, it's down to a budget issue. And then if you talk about money, people start getting uncomfortable because they're like, oh, we don't want to take money away from one thing. Why do we get to choose what's more important? Okay, well, lives are pretty important. And you think that people will take it seriously, that, hey, if there is a service that is, adding to our mortality rate in this population, if you will, maybe let's try and do something to tackle that so that, human error isn't allowing us to continue seeing these rates. Just a thought. But of course, a lot of it is down to politics. And if we start touching that, we're never going to end. So we take everything and we look at it in perspective. And then we think, why are we celebrating? If not much has changed, what are we celebrating for? Well, we're celebrating the other things too. That we're still seeing Black excellence every single day. That we get to witness it in an amazing way through technology now. That we get to build communities in a different way, that we get to rally communities in a different way, and that maybe this will help us see the push that we really want to see. Crown Act is an example of how we truly used technology, if you will, to push something impactful. That now corporations are feeling comfortable enough now to be like, yeah, we're on board with this and we're going to champion it all the way. Now, the Crown Act, for those who are wondering, is basically saying do not discriminate against hair. Now, I am a proud Black woman, and I will say it. I said it once, I'll say it again. And I love embracing the different ways I can do my Afro-textured hair. I'm fortunate that I've never really had anyone tell me that I couldn't enter a space or be part of a space because of my hair. I've had people who have hinted that maybe I should change my hair, and that is enough. Is why? Especially to children. Why? What are dreads really doing that disrupts the classroom? What are they doing? And then just think about that one comment that someone's hearing as a child, that your hair is somehow bad for a certain environment, and now they're holding on to that. People are saying that it's 2022. We shouldn't even be like, this shouldn't even be a conversation. We shouldn't still be fighting for people like to not discriminate against hair. Like, it feels like such a trivial thing. Like, it's hair. Why are you so pressed about it? I get it. You want to put up a certain image, you know, we want certain, in workplaces, you want to look professional to some degree. But to fire someone over hair, like, come on, it's excessive. So people are rallying around and signing petitions to get this act, you know, more of a universal law. It's worked. There are certain states now that have made it illegal to discriminate against hair. I think about 20 something states now that have said, yeah, we're going to make it illegal to discriminate against hair. But that's just a small part of how much we're still fighting for. And it's not just about acknowledging the very sad realities that we still live in till this day, as I said, that, you know, we can get tired of, especially as Black people, in a month that we're supposed to be celebrating, to now also have to amplify the story of someone else who has been taken way too soon because of assumptions, really is what it is. They assumed, so they acted. The police. And it can feel daunting, it can feel tiring, it can exhaust you, it can be a lot to take on. And I don't want this to be a show where we only talk about like, oh, this is the plight that we've been through, but I do want it to be kind of an eye-opener of where we still are and what we're still fighting for. That if we continue to celebrate Black History Month, if we continue to make noise, if we continue to be loud and proud about it, then maybe people will start to recognize and catch on and be like, okay, wow, so they're not going to be quiet. Might as well just give them what they want. Honestly, at this point, that's what we're fighting for, right? That we won't be silent, so might as well just give us what we're asking for. And we're just asking to matter. That's it. That's it, really. That's really the root of Black History Month, is awareness, acknowledgement, but just acknowledgement that we matter enough to acknowledge the history that we come from, the history that we're creating, because what's happening today is tomorrow's history. The kids somewhere down the line are going to be reading about the 2020s as part of history. They're going to have exams, write essays about it, research about it. I'm like, yes, hello, the pandemic alone, but also just how we dealt with the history that we knew of before and how we try to make a change and how we advanced as a society, and if we did advance at all. And looking at 1963 poster to now, it's, did we? And it's sad, and I know it's not happy, it doesn't feel like a celebration, but it's also a celebration of life, that we're still alive and able to do this, that we're still alive and able to fight, that we're still alive and able to acknowledge the work that our ancestors before us have done. That's a celebration in and of itself, okay? That is, like, grateful enough for that, you know? But we do need to talk about our history. And that's an issue here in Canada especially, that we know more about U.S. history than we do of Black Canadian history. Like, how is that right? And there are people who are fighting, even just within our province, there are people who are fighting to make Black Canadian history part of the curriculum, part of the regular curriculum, that it's not up to teachers to pick and choose whether they teach about Black Canadian history. Black Canadian history is Canadian history. Let's not get confused about that. So why are you picking and choosing whether you're going to include it in part of the history in the curriculum? It should be included regardless. Hello, it's part of how Canada became Canada. The Canada we know today. We're just going to skip over that fact? And it's the same with Indigenous people too, Indigenous history as well. We can't just skip over history that literally is what created the country we know of today, that we live in today. Like that just feels like a joke. Like, it just feels, again, disrespectful. Because like there are people who like lived through what we consider history now, who are still alive till this day to tell it to your face, that lived through it and can say, yeah, that was me, I was there, I did that. And we're just relying on only them to know about it. What happens when they go off, and they're no longer with us? What happens to that history then? It just dies along with No, that's why we talk about our history. That's why we continue to fight. That's why we continue to celebrate Black History Month. So that our history doesn't die off with generations because, one generation just couldn't remember enough to tell the next, or just, was dealing with all the other issues in the world, i.e. capitalism, climate change, climate disaster, really, let's be honest. Let's be honest about it. And I'm not chastising anyone. I'm really not. I'm not saying that we're not doing enough for ourselves even to learn about our history. Because, I can sit here and say, honestly, I don't know enough about my Nigerian history. I can wholeheartedly say that. I'm not proud of that. But I can say it, and I know the reason behind it is because the schools that I went to, first of all, if we did talk about Nigeria, it was all lumped into Africa. So most people didn't even know we were talking about Nigeria. They thought we were talking about the entire continent. And so then you're not even getting a full picture of history. You're just getting crumbs of whatever the colonizer basically wanted to record down and share with the masses. And then that's what they're regurgitating back to us. And then I'm going home and thinking, wait, this doesn't feel right. Because when I go home, things are different. They're telling me that I don't have functioning plumbing and don't have, NEPA, but that's another conversation. And don't have electricity, or there's food scarcity. But we're not talking about the mortality rate in North America, especially for Black mothers. We're not talking about the food deserts that a lot of communities are experiencing. We're not even talking about the fact that Flint, Michigan still does not have drinkable water. America aside, indigenous communities here today, not everybody has access to clean, drinkable water. But you want to come now and tell me that I'm suffering because I'm African. No, you're not going to tell me about myself. Look around us. Look around us. There's history everywhere. There's history everywhere. There's suffering everywhere. And that's not good. And we continue to play like we're trying to hide from it or something, or we're trying to hide ourselves from it because it feels uncomfortable, or it's too sad, or we don't want to talk about it. It makes us upset. It makes us really sink into reality. I get it. If it gets too heavy, for sure, 100%, you don't need to indulge in content that makes you feel bad. It makes you feel horrible inside. That's not what I'm advocating for. But we need to stop burying our heads in the sand and only looking out for ourselves. Like, that's really what it is. Only looking out for ourselves, so then we don't talk about the history because we don't want to, we don't want to make ourselves uncomfortable, or we're always looking out for other people. I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable. This is a fact. If it's a fact, I'm going to share it. I'm sorry that it makes you uncomfortable. It's not my intention to make you feel bad. It's my intention to make you realize that the history that we think is so far back, it's really not. 63 is 59 years ago. It's not that far. Okay, I know a lot of the pictures that we see, like, we're lucky that this is colorized because it's a poster, but a lot of the images that we see of this so-called history, we think, because they're in black and white, that it's like millennials ago, and that's why we should just forget about it and we shouldn't talk. It's not that long ago. People are still alive till this day to tell you about what they were doing on the day that Martin Luther King was telling us, I have a dream. So it's not even that long ago. We use the term history and it almost distance us from it a little bit more. Oh, that's history, that's in the past, let's leave it there. No, just because it's in the past doesn't mean we have to completely bury it there. We can acknowledge the past. So again, they say, if you know your history, chances of you repeating it is very slim. But if we continue hiding it and not teaching it, even in schools, because we say, oh, kids are too young to learn about racism. Okay, but then there's a 4-year-old who's coming home crying, saying that someone made them feel uncomfortable in kindergarten. That 4-year-old has to live in a world where they have to deal with racism, but because it makes you uncomfortable to teach it in class, all of a sudden it's not an option anymore. We're going to hold that thought and we're going to go on a quick break. Okay, so stay tuned as we discuss or continue to discuss why we should keep celebrating Black History Month. So stay tuned.
Canada's #1 African barbecue, the Suya Spot. Serving
back.
and satisfying your
It's a
Suya
lot.
needs from multiple
'Cause then when I
locations
say
across
something,
the
I think of something
GTA,
and I'm like, oh my
including
goodness, like, they're all
Scarborough,
connected.
downtown Toronto, North York, Woodbridge, and Mississauga. Also located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Visit any location today or stay home and order through
DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Skip the Dishes.
For more information, check out our website at www.thesuyaspot.com or call the toll-free line at +1 866 448 7892. The Suya Spot. You built it, now use it. Vous l'avez construit.
Hello and welcome back to the Chat Up Show. I'm your host Elizabeth Oloidi, and today we're discussing and chatting about why we should celebrate Black History Month. It is our second week in Black History Month, my favorite time of the month, except for my birthday. And honestly, this question has been around for a while. You know, why do we celebrate Black History Month? And we kind of touched on it a little bit in the first half, that it is to acknowledge the history that we come from, that we can't keep hiding as if racism isn't alive and well today, that it wasn't alive and well 59 years ago, and it's not going to be alive and well if we continue doing what we're doing now. That talking about the history that we come from hopefully allows us not to repeat the same mistakes. And it's also down to what we're teaching in our schools. As I mentioned before we went on a break, that a lot of schools are saying that they don't want to teach critical race theory or just about the racist past that a lot of countries have. Let's call it what it is. A lot of countries were built on racism. Facts. Facts. History tells us that, exactly. And not everyone wants to acknowledge that. Not everyone wants to teach that. And they think that, you know, there are certain ages that are too early. But it's unfortunate because we still live in a world where children are still susceptible to racism. That there's no real too young of an age for kids. Like, you'll post your baby on social media and you're guaranteed to see some form of a racist comment about Black children. Like, it doesn't matter the age. So maybe if we start teaching, you know, kids about it in school, maybe they start thinking critically at a younger age so that when they get to adults, they can think critically about racism, that it's not about being colorblind, that it's about acknowledging that, hey, there is somebody with a different skin tone, skin color, which probably means that they have a different experience in this world from me. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make me bad. It doesn't make me wrong for having a different experience than them, but I can acknowledge that this is something that, you know, makes their experience in this world a little different than mine. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. That's why the term privilege makes people, like, it makes people squirm for some reason. But no, you can't deny a certain level of privilege that you have because of the way the world runs. But it's how you deal with that privilege. Are you using it to then continue to oppress other people? Or are you using it to, you know, open more doors for others? That you're like, hey, I see that I have a seat at this table. I'm going to make it so I can wedge another seat open for someone else. That's a positive use of privilege. But when you say, no, I don't have privilege. No. And then you start playing oppression Olympics. We're not ever going to get anywhere with it. We're never going to get anywhere. Because then everyone is trying to out-oppress each other. Like, oh, I'm dealing with more than you. Therefore, I can't help you with what you're dealing with because I'm suffering. And that's how we end up with, oh, let's not talk about that history because it will make certain people feel uncomfortable remembering what their ancestors did or what their ancestors went through. So let's just completely cover it up. No. We can't continue doing that. Now let's look at the history of Black History Month, just to see where we've come from and where a lot of people want to be and want to go. So Black History Month was actually Black History Week, which was an annual celebration that started in the US in 1926. Okay? So that is almost 100 years. Almost 100 years. Now, it was conceived by historian Carter G. Woodson, who had proposed marking a time to honor, you know, African American contributions to society, to raise awareness of Black history, because it wasn't taught in schools. 1926. Okay, let's keep that number in mind. Wasn't taught in school, so they said, okay, let's at least have a week out of this month, because, you know, a lot of Black a lot of Black leaders were they were celebrating during that month anyway. But anyway, so we start with Black History Week. Then the month of February became Black History Month. in 1976 under President Gerald Ford, where he basically recognized the month as officially a month of celebration in the country. So we went from 26 to 76, so about 50 years of work to go from a week to a month. Okay, now when you put it in that perspective of like 50 years of work to go from a week to a month, it feels like, oh wow, like they fought so long for an extra 3 weeks to be added to our celebration. Now, a lot of people complain about February because it's basically only 4 weeks and it's like the shortest month of the year. Even on a leap year, it's still the shortest month of the year. But the reason behind it was it coincided with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln, who was the U.S. president who issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. Frederick Douglass, who was an African-American orator, social reformer, writer, abolitionist. And so they wanted to kind of celebrate, like, these were people that, you know, like made an impact in our community. And now the month also over time has acknowledged the contributions of legacy of the activists like Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, among many. Those are the names that usually come up around this time. Those are the names that we're usually like saying, hey, let's celebrate the works that they did for our society. Now, let's look at what was going on in Canada and who we can be celebrating and honoring, who is still very much with us today, that we could be celebrating and honoring for her work in Canadian Black history, basically. So in 1995, after a motion of then politician Honorable Jean Augustine, who was representing the riding of Etobicoke Lakeshore in Ontario, Canada's House of Commons, officially recognized February as Black History Month in honor of Black Canadians. And then in 2008, there was a senator, Senator Donald Oliver, who moved to have the Senate officially recognize Black History Month, which was, you know, unanimously approved. So then Black History Month was then born in Canada in 1995. In the UK, Black History Month was first celebrated in London in 1987 as part of African Jubilee Year, when on October 1st, Dr. Malana Karenga from the US was invited to an event at County Hall in London to basically mark the contributions of Black people throughout history. Now, we do have a special guest coming in to join our conversation. You know, we love having you on the show. Please welcome President of GBCAM, Kenny Bazua, joining us on this topic. So Kenny, what are your thoughts on recognizing our Black history in Canada especially?
First of all, let me thank you for doing this show. Thank you very much for having me too. I'm happy to join you. I want us to slow down a little bit and talk about the history, the Black history. I also want us to talk more onto what we do now to minimize the impact, and how do we go forward. Some people will say, we got some comment while you are on air, people are saying that a lot of us also cry too much. Do you agree to that some of us just use that as an example to cry too much? Black, they are killing us, we are dying, we are going to die soon, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of people also saying that we use that card a lot and we abuse it. And I want to know from you, what do you think to that? Do you think we actually abuse it? And is it possible to abuse it, even though, you know, we know that what has happened in the past is really not what I would say a normal person in the world would be proud of today?
I mean, it's hard to say, because we have every right to cry out. We shouldn't still be calling for people not to kill us. Point blank, period. But I will also say that you are the maker of your own story, basically. And if you choose to only focus on, oh, this is what is keeping me from doing this, it's going to keep you from actually going forward and moving forward in your life. If you say, I acknowledge the hardships that I have to face or the adversity that I have to face, but even through that, I'm still going to push through. And I think that's why Black History Month is so special, is because we see the history of Black people pushing through.
But the problem is, a lot of us will agree that, and I think you alluded to this in the beginning of the show, that it shouldn't be just one month. I think Black history is every day. And the reason I say this is, when you even dig deep to the World War, the very last World War, you will see the role the blacks play. I was doing some research the other day. I realized that Nigeria played a major role. We actually went to war, got recruited, and so on. Our airspace was used and so on. But those things you never see. Even in Canada here, a lot of Africans, Nigerians to be specific, was taken away to Canada as slaves. And a lot of people don't know that. So I think it should be an everyday thing.
Yep.
So, but not to say that some of us, in my own submissive opinion, at this point I'm making my own opinion, we should be mindful of when and how we use the race card. Sometimes it takes a value, because I don't think that, I'm not of the opinion that somebody should not look at my color. I think you should do what you have to do with me despite my color. I don't expect you to be colorblind to say I don't see you are black. I am black, and it's real. And unfortunately, for some people, I'm going to be black forever. It will never change.
Unfortunately,
for some people, yes. Yeah. But however, you have to learn to look past my color now and see who I am and deal with me on that basis. So I think our focus should not be that race. I think our focus should be one human race. One human race, and our counterparts, the Caucasians, should accept the fact that we are all equal.
Now, just going back to what you talked about in terms of the quote-unquote race card, I think that, yes, there are some instances where folks are quick to jump to racial innuendos, rather, is what I'm going to use. Racial innuendos in certain situations, and it's not always that. For example, when the baby got called out, for basically just saying derogatory things about the LGBTQ community and those living with HIV, people were saying that he was being called out and being punished because he was a black artist. But then it's also like, it can also be that he's being called out because of what he said is just not what is not acceptable.
So my point here is that it's people that use a race card when it's not needed,
and it's to evade accountability a lot of the
time. So you find out that it makes it harder for people that really fight for the cause to make their point. If I beat a red light and a cop pull me over and I'm saying you're pulling me because I'm black, so it makes it harder for people like you and me that is actually doing the real work, trying to make a point, trying to make people understand that we all value, we all count equally. So first of all, let's weed out those ones, in my own opinion, that just not doing it right, they're just playing the game. Now, having said that, let's talk about tomorrow.
Right.
How do we move from the crying point to the progressive point?
That's the thing, though, because it's based on the reception, I think. Because I feel like we've been crying for so long, but no one's really listening. But maybe now people are starting to slowly listen, that there's a shift in generation, which means that there's a shift in power, and there's a shift in like overall herd thought, basically, like our overall consciousness and how we view the world that we live in and how we view humanity as a race, as opposed to different races that break up humanity and one is better than the other. That we're slowly breaking down those walls and those barriers. We have people even like saying that borders shouldn't even be a thing. Like, what I'm trying to get to is that our thoughts are more progressive now, and those who are in positions of power are slowly becoming a little more progressive. I think that's where we'll lead up towards.
I agree with you in part. The reason I said in part is because it's good to cry, it's good to see the progress and so on. I personally see the progress too, but there's still more work to do in enabling ourselves to position ourselves. Barack Obama was the president, and it's clear to everybody that for a black person, a dark color skin person, for a lack of better explanation, to get to a certain position, they have to work twice as their counterpart. However, we should be prepared to do that until we prove ourselves. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be so, but unfortunately, it is so, and that's what we have to do with. So, deal with. So, what I'm saying here is that many of us, not all of us, some of us, I would say, we get stuck in that point of where we just identify the problem and cry about it. We don't provide solution or go for it. If we know if you know that, for example, let's say, for lack of a better example, our children are discouraged to go to university, they're just encouraged to go to college. You know that. So what you do, you make sure you get all your A straight, get it, that you make it harder for the counterpart to really actually turn you down. And that's what I'm trying to say.
That we now have to go into the phase of working harder for ourselves, for our future, as opposed to just waiting for people to change.
Yes, because the change we really want start with us. So it shouldn't be so. Everybody should be equal, but it is so now. Now, because it's already so, we must do everything possible to make sure that we are ahead of time. For example, I'll say this now, and a lot of people will disagree with me. We know that many malls, many stores, as a black person, you go, the security is following you around in some part of the world. We know that. So I'm going to go there now with a hoodie, put my hands in my pocket, start walking shady. I'm calling for somebody to shoot me.
Okay, see? Okay, I'll let you finish your thought.
So I know that, and I know it's not right. But what will I do? Because I want to be alive to say the story tomorrow. I want to be alive to change the people. Dead people don't change people. So I have to be smart about it and say, okay, hello, sir. Why are you walking around with me? Take it easy. I'm here to shop. I have to make that change, because sometimes some people that are actually doing this, they're just ignorant. And they were born into it. Maybe their parents was not ignorant. Their parents taught them, but now they are ignorant. So you got to position yourself in a way that you can get them to unlearn some certain things and educate them, unless they vehemently refuse.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm just going to play the other fence just for the sake of debate. So when people judge because of your skin color, a lot of folks are saying that, you know, we want to get to a point where I don't have to censor myself. I don't have to code switch in certain situations. Like, I should be able to wear my hoodie and walk around with my hands in a pocket and not expect a security guard to follow me around in a store. Why is the security guard following me around in the store for? That's their prejudice that they're now projecting on me, that I haven't done anything that's actually suspicious. I'm just walking around with a hoodie on. I get what the picture is, and I get what the stereotype is, but why should we have to?
Okay, let me explain
censor?
This is going to go very unpopular, but I'm going to say this, and I urge our viewers and listeners to just take a deep breath and see what I'm trying to say. Should it not go well with you? I am a Nigerian. I'm from Edo State, and there are a lot of tribes in Nigeria. If an Igbo man come to Edo State, which we speak Benin language, and they are doing something, there are two people, one is an Igbo man, one is an Edo man, and they are in Edo State, the way both are received is completely different. If a Benin man is in Igbo land, the same thing. So this is something that we're talking about, is whether you like it or not, is imbued in human being. The degree you take it is what different. It was differ. Tribal, just tribal. I'm not talking about color. Now we're all blacks. You are Yoruba, you are Igbo, you are Hausa. There's already problem. So it's something that we may not be able to eliminate, but we can minimize it and avoid it.
But you could argue that the reason that there are problems are because of another person coming and creating the problems and disappearing.
Well, that's if you start talking about when our colonial masters were there. What about pre-colonial? What happened? What about pre-colonial? A lot of us just settle with the story about the people that came to colonize us. What about the pre-colonial? What happened? How many kings were killing kings? How
And
many
that is
people were
black
taking,
history.
How many people were we're talking about black history. Let's be honest. How many kings were suppressing another king? How many people were saying that the other ones are inferior? So it's easy to settle with just the post-colonial. What about pre-colonial? So you are right. You're right. But remember that some chiefs also sold their people out for slavery. Some were under pressure to do so. They didn't want to do so, but some voluntarily did too. So, but in my own submissive opinion, I think this is something that is within us. Even with the Caucasians, you will see the Scottish don't want to go with the Poland.
I mean,
the
look at
Poland
how
don't want to go
Irish-
to Italian. The Italian don't want to go. It's something in us, but the degree in which it manifests in your daily endeavor, it's what's really, really appalling.
And then, I mean, I understand. I'm gonna say it. I understand when people say like different times call for different reactions. For example, we probably would not have been having this type of conversation a decade, 15 years ago, the way that we are now. It probably would have been a little more watered down. Like it wouldn't be as raw as I think we're having now. But even then, there were still people who were, having these conversations, doing all of these things. So I think that regardless of, what degree or whatever, of course we have to take it upon ourselves to choose not to be that way, to choose like anti-racism, to choose not to discriminate or be prejudiced against others that are different from us. It is work that we as humans have to do in general. But like, why is this so hard?
You see,
for other people to understand, like, just don't.
Okay, let's switch.
And we're not even thinking of ignorance. Like they know that it's
Let's
wrong.
switch from color.
Okay.
Let's talk about class. Okay, everything is intertwined. Let's talk about class.
Capitalism, yes.
You see, even among you as black people,
Yeah.
there will be some group of people that say they are elite, they are scholars. They don't want to mingle with every other person. The other people are generic. Mankind has that in them. They have that in them to say that one way or the other, whether I like it or not, I may be superior. I may not be superior. So that's why you see some people say, yeah, these are different class. The class has always existed. Has always existed. The degree which you take it. So for me, we're gradually showing our counterpart that we are able and capable in many levels. Well, when I mean our counterpart, I'm talking about black now and white, right? Well, dark-skinned people. We are showing that we are able. And yes, it shouldn't be that I have to prove myself first. I should be accepted with the way I come. But it's not like that. Unfortunately, it's not fair. It's the way it is right now. And look at, for example, you can look at the political terrain. You can look at the geographical terrain, political terrain. You can look at the leadership in Africa. You can tell, if you're a historian, that those leaders, let's talk about presidency and the rest, they are installed by the Caucasians. That's number one. Look at the geographical terrain. Look at the Africa. If you look at the Africa, you know that the map of Africa is actually bigger than what they are showing us in the map. So this is really, really deep than that. But we already are at the edge, at the end, the tail end of the whole thing. So we need to work our way up and prove ourselves. Hopefully one day, while we are still alive, we can see ourselves with our counterpart equal, or they can see us equal.
So then ultimately it's education.
Education and self-awareness. A lot of us as black people don't know who we are. In my opinion, not all of us. We don't know the power we possess, from our skin color to our resilience, to our willing to survive, to achieve, from even our land where we're from.
The resources.
Practically, if you look very well, the African feeds the rest of the world in many levels. We must identify that, and we must also go back to how our identity was stolen when it was stolen.
Yeah.
And then try and do a factory reset, if that exists.
Factory reset. It's hard. But I think that the more we talk about our history that's not just slavery, because you did bring up a point that we don't talk about pre-colonial black history enough. And that's basically what like the Ontario Black History Society is fighting for, is to get more of this education into classes. Of course, majority of the black history that we have in Canada is to do with people that were enslaved. But just that first step, to even just acknowledge that and teach that, to say, okay, here is like a introduction to black history, it feels like a small ask, but it's like the first step towards progression. I think that's the
I
first
think
step towards
that's
making a change.
great. Number one, I
It's
think
not
that's
enough,
great.
yes.
But I think the other part of it that we also should be fighting for simultaneously to be encouraging our black people to be writing our stories or writing our books.
Yes.
If you approve our stories to be in the school, are they not still going to read what the Caucasian wrote?
That is true.
Are they not going to read what the white person wrote?
'Cause
So
if
what
you
is
look at
the
syllabus,
difference? The difference is that we should be fighting for both simultaneously.
Yeah.
We should be writing our books, writing our stories, putting our story there, so that when that eventually go through, because eventually it will go. When it goes through, we have materials
Yeah.
to deploy to back what has been approved.
That's yes. I think that's an angle we often forget. Is that what history will we be teaching when we finally able to teach it?
I was looking at I think they call it the Liberation Gate somewhere in America. They wrote Pakistan, everything. When it goes to the African, they didn't write the country, just wrote Africa. So Africa is a continent. How come you write India, Pakistan, and the rest? I forgot. I think they call it the Gate of Liberation. I'm not too sure now the right name in this U.S. where they list all those countries that fought and that supported them in the World War. But however, we're listening as a lot of people still believe that Africa is a country.
Yes.
So it means to say that not that person that is we must understand that the person may be ignorant, but also the only way people understand you must speak the language they understand.
Sometimes you have to choose violence.
Sometimes you have to also present that thing for them. Sometimes if you are not presenting it to them, people only know what they are interested to know.
Yeah.
Until you push it to their attention, push it to their way and seek their attention to be interested in. I'm not saying that we are not trying or we should just be running after people how to prove ourselves. I'm saying that we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We need more radio stations. We need more TV. We need more writers. We need more educators. We need more of everything, not just on one level. And kudos to Black History Society. They're doing a wonderful job. Natasha Henry, you know I love you. You're my girl. You guys are doing a wonderful job, but there's still more work to do. There's still people like me that still need to support you guys and join you guys. So we all have enough blame to share, to be honest. I'm not just putting it on one person. All of us have a role in this.
Now I'm going to take my role right now and share a piece of Black history so nobody says I didn't teach you something. But I have a piece of Black history that I think is really interesting for us to just physically see an artifact from Canadian Black history. Now, when folks were enslaved in Canada, yes, they were. They were. If you didn't know, now I'm telling you. People would put up ads in the newspaper to say, hey, this is a missing enslaved person. They did not call them enslaved people, but I will use that because they are people anyway. Not just slaves, there are people that were enslaved. So they would put out ads for folks that ran away from their enslavement, basically. And this is one from 1787 in Quebec. So for those who say, oh, that didn't happen in Canada, that was only the United States, we only hear about slavery in the United States, we only hear about enslaved people running away in the United States. No. He ran away from the subscribers between the hours of 7 and 8 o'clock is what it reads yesterday evening. Excuse the language, Negro wench named Bet, about 18 years old, middle stature, speaks the English, French, and German language as well. Imagine how she was able to learn all those languages, probably not the language of our ancestors, most definitely not the languages of our ancestors, but spoke those 3 European languages. Had on when she went away, explains what she had on when she quote unquote ran away, and goes on to basically say that there is a reward if found of $20. And I'm sure if we look at inflation, how much $20 would have been in 1787.
It will interest you the way I come on this, and a lot of people may bash me on this.
What?
It will interest you. Why are you surprised on this?
I'm not surprised.
This is still happening today.
Yeah.
Okay, let me break it down in a comic way. When we were not ready, they came and take us as slave. When we are ready, they came with embassies and put their embassies for us to apply for visas. Even at that, we still come here and leave our degrees somewhere and become a cab driver and work in the factory. We still come here and pave the way and sweep the floor, do the odd jobs. This is still happening. They run away there, look into it, and define it properly. It's still happening. It's just re-strategized, a little bit refined and modified. We, as colored people, have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do in many levels. You have to see it beyond that. And that just happening, just like you said, they were demanding for police many years ago.
Bounty.
That is still happening today. All these are still there. And if it's still there, just rebranded, it means we're not doing enough.
Well, that is the whole conversation as to what police reform really is. How policing the states truly came about, and how it's still remnants of when folks would quote unquote run away to try and find freedom, and there would be ads and bounties put on them to be found, dead or alive in some cases. Preferably alive, of course, because then you can't use them, as a slave. Now, in this instance, she was also pregnant, which was another added incentive to, slave owners, because they want to find not just the mother, but also the baby who could be a future worker for them in some way as well. And it kind of touches on just like when we weren't humans. That whole ad wasn't describing a human. That was describing a property commodity.
Let me show you another thing. There are a lot of us that become, in quote unquote, privilege. Let's take another for example. Once we become privileged, in quote and unquote, we move from the area. Let's take GBKM is located in the area of Jane and Finch. We will move from that area, and it become a bragging right to say where we live. Oh, where I live, I'm the only black person in that area. You become a bragging right. This is still happening every day. So the problem is this: those are supposed to speak for us. Majority of them are actually, forgive my word, not all of them, please. Majority of them are house Negro. We have to wake up. I'm being real today. Let's speak it the way it is. If we all our elites.
I mean, people say it.
All our elites, all our people that are really in the front line, if they actually told the route organically the way they are really for us, for this reason, there will be more difference than the way it is right now.
Well, because, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone, as I said it before, that a lot of us are just looking out for ourselves. That a lot of people are like, as long as I am not constantly harassed with the racism that I could face as a black person, I'm good. I'm sorry about my neighbor. That's on you. You pick yourself up by your bootstraps and you make sure you are never looked down upon.
That's one part. The other part is he who paid the piper dictates the tune. He who paid the piper dictates the tune.
I mean, but then technically we're all getting paid by the same people if we really think about it.
So you see
we're all getting paid by the same five families.
You see that brings us to the next level, that we have a lot of work to do, economical empowerment.
That's why we're talking
we have a lot of work to do. So you see, it brings us to what I just said, that we still have a long way to go to achieve what we really want. If we really want to be free, as in free, FREE, we have a long way. If we want to be free just in paper, we want to be free just for political correctness, if we want to be free just for inclusiveness, then yes, we are free now.
Yeah, but then the economic part.
But if we want to be really free...
But it's systemic and institutional. I think this also just goes to show how deep it is. That it's not
just like if you own a business, you don't own the building, you practically don't own a business. Let me repeat it. If you own a business, you don't own the building, you practically, the chances of you not owning the business is high. So it's deeper than that, and conversations like this is what we really need to do. We need to be conscious of how you see it. Look at what is flying around now. Lately, inclusion is flying around. The word inclusion. There are so many big words that are flying around now.
But it's all surface.
In my own submissive opinion, that is a broad day artificial blanket. It's a broad day artificial blanket that is just there. It's like a green screen. That's right, what it is. Because when you talk about inclusiveness, if you are hiring me in a school, because our school only have one teacher, now you're a black, you're not even looking at my qualification now, you're just bringing me in, and then I come in, I am useless, I can't speak in a board meeting, I can't impart any policy, I can't make any decision, then...
Is this a conversation on affirmative action now?
No, I'm just...
No, because it's kind of like, I know, part of me wants to touch on it, but also like that's a deep one, because you want to know that, you know, I'm still being looked at because I'm qualified, not because of my race. And then you bring in affirmative action, and a lot of people start thinking that it's only because of you're a woman, or you identify as part of the LGBTQ plus community, you identify as a BIPOC, a part of the BIPOC community. Like you start thinking that, okay, it's not because I'm capable for the job, it's because you just wanted to fill some sort of quota within your
it didn't even end
industry.
There. If it's not because you bring me in, it could be the beginning of changes, because you have brought me in now for a different call. But the problem here is that my position become dormant. I become a figurehead because I'm empowered. At the board meeting, I'm not going to say anything.
Because it's not real power.
I'm not there. Mm-hmm. If you've brought me in, and regardless of your motive, you still allow me to be part of the decision making, then that is the real change.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. That you can't just allow me to just be like the picture, and then when it's time for pictures,
you come in. Then you will hear, you will be like, no, Jenny, like, come forward, come forward. But when it's time to decision making, you don't come forward, you don't count.
Or you can't.
For for most folks, they're sufficient, you know, it's sufficient for them, you know why? Yeah. At least they can, it's the bragging right. Mm-hmm. They can say, you know, I'm the first police officer in Ontario. I'm the first black police officer in whatever. I'm just, you know, for lack of better example.
You know what I just thought of? You can't be the first of something and then not allow for there to be more. Like, you want to be the first and only. How is that progression? How is that change? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In my own opinion, Black History Month is not for celebration. It's to be sober. It's to reflect and to think of way forward. We is to appreciate those that have fought for us. But while doing that, we should be very, very sober. Because if you have somebody that you start grade 1 together, then university, you are still in high school, there's a problem somewhere. So we should be sober and be everything. See, success is planning. Mm-hmm. We should be aware of everything we're doing in this pursuit. It's not the time to kind of battle around and play the politics of Black history. Keep in mind, Black history also have its own policy. I remain Kenny Bazwai, and I rest my case.
Thank you so much, Kenny, for joining us. And that actually does conclude the Chat Up Show for today. But just the last sound off, as Kenny just said before he left, that Black History Month should be a time that we reflect, and we kind of use this time to reposition ourselves and reprogram, like, okay, how are we going to move forward and really fight for the changes that we want? How are we going to use the platform that we have in Black History Month to amplify the issues that need change today? How are we going to amplify the voices that need to be amplified in our community to fight for those changes as well? I think that's what even though we want to celebrate as Black people, Black History Month isn't just for everybody else to learn about, you know, what has been done to Black folks. It's also a time for us to think about how we want to make sure that the next generation of Black leaders, the next future of Black people in this world, are equipped, are positioned better than we were, are able to live unapologetically as Black as they want in this world, and not fear any prejudice, not fear any rejection, not fear any resistance for being Black out loud. And I think that's a great way to sum up today's discussion. Again, thank you, Kenny, for joining us. And thank you for those who have also joined in at home as well. Thank you for joining in our chat for today. We're going to continue on in Black History Month. It's going to get real this month. Let me tell you, this is just a little glimpse. Okay, we're going to talk about it. We're going to get real about Black history and what it truly means and why we keep celebrating it as well. This conversation doesn't end here. Black History Month isn't just 1 month. It's Black history is 365, 366 on a leap year. Okay, every single day of our lives, we are living, creating, being part of Black history. And that is something we should take pride in. But we should also respect that honor as it is. That it is an honor to be alive and able to continue to use our voices, to use our platforms, to fight the good fight for justice for all humans in this world across the board. So let's own to that. And also just respect for our, our leaders from the past as well, for the work that they've done for us to get to where we are. It's also a sense of respect for them, for the hard work that they've put in, that the sacrifices that they made for us to be where we are too. That we continue on the torch, we hold on the torch until we don't need to carry it anymore. Wouldn't that be the day? Anyway, as always, you can keep up with the GBKM network in various ways. You can continue to listen and watch live 24/7 at www.gbkm.fm or www.gbkm.tv. You can also make sure you download our free app available for all iOS and Android devices so you can keep up with the GBKM network on the go. And you'll receive a notification every time we go live. You can also continue to watch us on Facebook and YouTube at GBKM Network, or follow us on Instagram and Twitter at GBKM Network for more updates on what's going on at the network. And you can also follow me, your host, on Instagram and Twitter at TIS_Liz_O for more Black History Month celebration and just more updates on what's going on at the Chat Up Show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Eloidy, and I will chat with you the same time, same place next week. Take care and stay safe.
Utilisez-le. Canada's #1 African barbecue, the Suya Spot. Serving and satisfying your suya needs from multiple locations across the GTA, including Scarborough, downtown Toronto, North York, Woodbridge, and Mississauga. Also located in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Visit any location today or stay home and order through
DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Skip the Dishes.
For more information, check out our website at www.thesuyaspot.com or call the toll-free line at +1 866 448 7892. The Suya Spot. You built it, now use it. Vous l'avez construit, utilisez-le. Canada's #1 African barbecue, the Suya Spot. Serving and satisfying your suya needs from multiple locations across the GTA, including